Hello. Welcome to another episode of the Meter Cute interviews here on Meter and Mayhem. Today, I'll be chatting with the authors of the poetry collection Skipping Stones, Adrienne Stevenson and Marie-Andrée Auclair. Adrienne has been a first and third place winner in the Poets Pathway Lapman Challenge, and Marie-Andrée has been shortlisted for the Poem of the Year award from ARC Poetry magazine. Both have had work published in the US, UK, Canada, Europe, and Australia, and currently live in Ottawa, Canada. Are you ready to learn more about their work? Me too. Let's sit back, relax, and get ready to fall in love.
Good afternoon, I'm Marie-Andrée Auclair, and the first poem I'm gonna read is also the first poem of the chapbook that we wrote in a way together, Adrienne and I. And the first poem and the last poem were collaborative, and that was quite interesting to alternate lines in some ways. Skipping Stones. You lie on a sandy beach. The sun-warmed sand pricks your skin with finely ground glass specks. The lake has not yet licked smooth, while worn flat pebbles remember the granite mountain that looms over your lonely shore. Her smooth stones, each fitting the hearts of her palms, trace low arcs above the water, touch and rebound until their energy is spent. Then one of us sacrifices the next stone to the god of placid waters. You sit, arms akimbo, fingers idle, attentive to clouds and birds, the patterns of flight and wind, the peaceful motion of branches and leaves that draws you to its breath, to yours, and you feel yourself taking root like grass and trees. That is what we do, throw our poems on the page of a common lake. What sinks quickly is culled. What uncolds its energy in many rebounds stays. A blended poem for a venture, another bird in the sky. We had a method to write this poem together. I don't quite remember. Use each the same number of lines, like 9, and then try to make something and trim it into what we thought would be satisfactory.
Yes, that pretty much explains it. We did work on those, both the first poem and the last poem of the book together. It was an organic process. We went back and forth on it several times. So by the time we polished it, I couldn't really, I would have to go back right to the beginning to see whose words were whose. I'm Stevenson, and I'm going to read you one of my poems. So this is from the interior of the book. It's called A Garrisoned Vale. The valley is as deep as a damaged heart, guarded round with nettles and broken glass, thorn bushes and false smiles, entry barred to all but a chosen few. The guardian who lives there must not be confused with the chosen. Although he has given them access, he guards his own silences. Who shall unwrap long hidden secrets and expose the guilty in their shame? The guardian is wary of giving up the key. He remains steadfast in shadow. Come, you who suffer and despair, join the ranks of the secret keepers. Hoard your precious pain, be sheltered in this veil. Then, when self-love resumes, take your pain and speak it to those who need to hear. You will be believed. I think that's self-explanatory.
Yes. So I'll continue with my poem from inside the chapbook. It's called Outlook. A cardinal ruffles the air. I trace its red flash through swinging branches, flutters of green, the echo of its song. My eyes scan the small space around my boots, each step the center of a brief circle. That is what I care about this morning. The path, vague pattern of rocks, leaves, and twigs that sneaks between soaring trunks, does not exist until I walk it. I follow a crooked line that my eyes cast ahead. I climb steps made for drunken giants who thirst for my devotion, which I give, which I gladly give, afraid of the loose stone, the pretty mossy one, and the tuck of my backpack. Balance, no longer a given, demands scrutiny. When at last I sit, unhook my pack, take slow breath, my body warm and thrumming, I notice an absence of inner verbiage, no volley of thoughts to keep me company. Instead, my mind broadens over rhythmic waves of hills, calm and vast, and dissolves. That poem was inspired by a trek I did in Japan that was nicely marked with signs, but not really marked in terms of where to put your foot next. So that's how I had to climb through rocks in order to get further. And it was quite an experience and a good view of meditation and of being a humble part of the landscape. Thank you.
So to conclude the reading, I'll read you the final poem of the book, which is also a jointly written poem. And again, this was a fascinating process, and we will probably do it again, but we specifically wrote these two poems to bookend the chapbook. And somehow they managed to do the trick, I think. Kaleidoscope. A flick of the wrist, and the world in shards of colored glass shifts. We glean meaning from startling juxtapositions, where we find good company for our journey and plot our path ahead. Phrases uttered by other mouths inform our meanderings. We rotate around a sun, any sun, breaking circles into spirals. Even if our final destination is certain, nothing is fixed, not even our trajectory, and we may flick our wrists again for another hope until at last brightness fades. Thank you, Jennifer, for the opportunity to read.
Thank you both for that wonderful reading. It was lovely to get to hear the collaborative work and also your own poems so that I could hear sort of where the different voices were, but also how the voices just blend seamlessly together in the collaborative work.
Well, that was part of the fun, was being able to do that and to have that give and take. We've been working together in a workshop for a long time, but this was an entirely different process.
I think the fact that we in fact had been working on poetry, our own poetry and others, for about 10 years gave us a good sense of what we each do and how it could be blended in a new thing. The lines for these two poems were new lines. It was not recycling and blending something. It was two new poems for the purpose of this chapbook, which gathers a number of poems that we plucked out of our inventories, and we had a large number. We trimmed it until we felt it was something that fitted together.
So you said that you trimmed some out. What made you all gravitate toward doing a chapbook as opposed to a full-length collection?
Oh, that's an interesting question. We really didn't consider doing a full-length collection. This was our first collaboration, and we wanted to test the water, if you like. and come up with something cohesive that was perhaps just a capsule, and then see if it worked and if we could get it in print, and then sort of take it from there.
I think Adrienne said it very well. It was to choose a project, and it was her initial idea, a project that would be of a manageable size, so that we would see the end reasonably soon and have a view of the whole thing. And we kept lots of lists to decide which poem of which person to take, where to place it in relation to the whole. That part was a time-consuming process. Maybe next time we'll do it all with new stuff. Sorry, I see you moving your head.
No, I'm just saying that we started with, I think, 50 poems each.
Yes.
And really squeezed it down to a real distillation.
And to chapbook size.
Yeah.
Because we thought in order to get it published, it had to meet some chapbook criteria of publishers of chapbooks. Hence, a limited number of pages, lower than for a book.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice. Well, I look forward if you all decide to do some more collaboration and have a full length. I'll look forward to checking that out, or another chapbook, or whatever may come.
We'll let you know.
Yeah.
That would be a fun project.
And I'm sure we'll probably do some individual work as well. So, you know, it's just a matter, I need to stop submitting to magazines for a while and work on bigger projects.
I know that feeling. It can be hard to balance all the different parts of being a writer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Speaking of writers, I have a question, and you all can answer whoever wants to answer first, or I'm interested to know what poet you might be in love with. Like, whose work do you love and return to in your own writing, in your own reading?
Yeah.
Go
Well,
ahead.
I kind of have two phases in my poetry development, because I had a hiatus of about 25 years. Yeah, my first 25 years, I read and wrote a lot of poetry. And I was very much interested in folk musicians and singer-songwriters, and everything from Bob Dylan to Leonard Cohen to Joni Mitchell. I've still listened to that music, and I still get in touch with those poems, usually via music. And then I had a gap once I started working and had quite an intense job. I really didn't have anything much to do with poetry for about 25 years. And then in the early 2000s, I got involved with a messaging group that was centered around The Lord of the Rings and Viggo Mortensen, of all people. But it turns out he wrote poetry. And so some of us, we developed a little creative group within our message board where people started writing poetry. And I sort of got going writing poetry again. Now, I don't read much Viggo Mortensen these days, but I, am very open to others. I don't have a special favorite from the moderns. There's some very good local poets here in the Ottawa area. And I sort of try and spread my attention around and read a lot of different things.
Excellent. Marie-Andrée, who is one of your favorite poets?
Well, in a way, for this kind of poetry, it's a late discovery in a way for me, because I was brought up in France. So I learned about French literature and a bit of European language like English and German, Latin. So that was a different education. And when I came to Canada, at first, my main focus was working. So I wrote prose, but mostly for myself. Then through the years, I discovered that I could get involved in poetry because it was not the intimated things that I think it was, that the metered poetry, the rigid form of the sonnet, though it's not done that way anymore often. But all those things, you know, where you have to know the accentuation exactly on the which syllable of the word and so on. I'm not good at that. So something freer was accessible to me. And I was fortunate to meet along the way quite a number of guides for that. I belonged to a number of poetry groups, and nobody or hardly anybody rhymes. So that saves all the discussion about, oh, it's, the rhyme, blah, blah, blah. So that gave me a freedom to express myself. Also, in terms of live poetry, I went I guess it was 10 years ago, to a lot of spoken poetry shows and workshops. And that was so exciting to see poetry so alive, to see also the variety of subjects that were approached. I remember a poem about hamburgers. It was entertaining, but it was hamburgers. And there were others that were much more serious about war and rape and difficult issues. So that gave me a sense of a vast universe in addition to the more classical one, and the possibility for me to fit in it somehow. And in groups, people have been extremely kind to help me. When my English was inappropriate, they would say, it's awkward. And I would know I needed to correct and learn more about usage. I also went to a very interesting workshop at Carleton University. It was part of a series of workshops and courses that I took about more recent poetry of a Canadian flavor. And mostly the focus was after the Second World War. And there was this idea of getting a bit different from or distinct from British poetry and its formality, and to have a new, I suppose, Canadian poetic identity.
Mhm.
So I was quite lucky to be exposed to all those things. And that leads me, I guess, to answer your question after this long preamble. One poet I like very much is Mary Oliver, because she has a simplicity of form, a simplicity of topic, but at the same time, there is depth, and it's presented in a subtle manner. And I find that very approachable and human.
Do you have a favorite Mary Oliver poem that you'd like to share, or do you want to share one from someone else?
No, I prepared one from her.
Perfect.
Sure. Do you want me to read it now?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd love that.
It's called Today by Mary Oliver. Today, I'm flying low, and I'm not saying a word. I'm letting all of the voodoos of ambition sleep. The world goes on as it must. The bees in the garden rumbling a little, the fish leaping, the gnats getting eaten, and so forth. But I'm taking the day off, quiet as a feather. I hardly move, though really I'm traveling a great distance. Stillness, one of the doors into the temple.
Ah, that was wonderful. And I love, everything that you pointed out about her work. I love, and it makes you feel so peaceful just to hear it, even.
We need peace.
Yes. Adrienne, did you want to share any poems of any of the folks that, I mean, you kind of gave sort of larger groupings, but is there any poem that you'd like to share by someone else?
Well, actually, I will read you part of a Viggo Mortensen poem. It's because I happen to have it handy. What the heck? It's called Communion, and I'll read you. It's quite long, so I'll read the first part and then the last part. We've left shore somehow, become the friends of early theory, close enough to speak of desire and pain of absence, of mistakes we'd make given the chance. Each smile returned makes harder avoiding dreams that see us lying in the early evening, certain curtain shadows, skin safe against skin, bloom of compassion, respect for moments, eyes locked turns forever into one more veil that falls away. You ordered me off my knees into your arms. Wasn't to beg that I knelt, only to see you once from below. Tried to say something that filled my mouth and longed to rest in your ear. Don't dare write it down, for fear it'll become words, just words.
Wow. And was he wasn't on the message board with you all,
Oh
right?
God, no. And nobody rational ever assumed that he might be. No, it was a fan board, but I met a lot of creative people there, and we got doing our own stuff, which I found was a wonderful stimulus. It got me writing again, both poetry and prose. So, it's not all bad.
Yeah, any path that gets you there, right? It's
Exactly. Yeah.
Speaking of paths, I have a question for both of you. It's one of the questions that I ask everyone, which is if you could go back in time somehow and talk to an earlier version of yourself, what advice would you give to her?
Mine would be to keep writing, make time for it, even if it's only 15 minutes a day. Because I kept making things, but I stopped writing because I wrote for my job. And, reserve yourself a little mental energy for the things you love to do.
Yeah, that's so good. Even if it's just 15 minutes, whatever you can get, carve yourself out a little bit.
Yeah.
I love that. Marie-Andrée?
I think it's a very good advice that Adrienne gave about writing, keeping at it. The advice I thought of is about stay curious, stay open to learning new stuff, to having another perspective on the world, listening to other people who have different perspective on the world or the things that I'm so sure about, and they see it so differently. So keep being curious, willing to learn, and then put it in writing, of course. Also, I would say, in a way, read, which is the other people's writing, but which is also tapping into more or less universal stories, like mythologies. They're quite actual, they're quite ancient. That's good stuff.
Yes, and I'd agree with that. I never stopped reading. I live in a library.
I did actually wonder, when we first started, I wondered if you were at a library, but you're just in your own home.
This is my office, and that's mostly historical books. I just published a historical novel last year.
What is your favorite historical time? Like, what time period do you like to write about?
At the moment, I'm writing about Upper Canada, which is Ontario now, but the time period was 1791 to 1841. So I've got a nice little 50-year slot that I've got about 150 or a couple hundred books on behind me there, and trying to know as much as I can so that I don't have to drag it onto the page.
That can, and poetry can help with that, right? Learning to be concise and to figure what needs to be in and all that.
Yes, it's important to know what to leave out.
Yes. Well, I'm also curious to know if a former version of yourself could somehow get in a time machine and showed up with you all right now, what advice do you think that she would give to you now? Are there things that she would have wanted or things that you've lost, or what do you think she would say?
Somehow I'm laughing a little bit because I think that would be for me the same advice. Add into it Adrienne's, but yeah, keep being curious, keep being inquisitive, and learning more and listening, which goes so well with learning, right? So
Yeah,
that's
and
similar.
I can't disagree with that either. But I think what mine would probably say is life is short. Keep going. Do what you can while you're here.
That is that's a theme that has come up in a couple different interviews with folks, that a lot of people have brought that up, and um I hope I keep remembering that. I hope I never lose
Yeah.
lose touch with that.
But
I
the other
think it's
thing
hard
is
to,
you can't regret time misspent because you spent it. You know, you were content doing what you did at the time, and go forward, go ahead, do more.
I think it's also difficult when one is young to think that life is finite.
Hmm.
And then later on, it's easier to remember, oh yeah, am I wasting my time? But then sometimes it's so much fun to waste it doing something vain or superficial. So
Even
yeah,
computer games, sometimes you need to just put it in neutral.
well,
Yeah,
that goes well with no regrets, right? Because it was done and it was done for reason that seemed valid.
Indeed.
yeah. I will never regret getting to level 7,000 on Candy Crush.
There you go. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. It's probably going to be my greatest accomplishment, I think.
I took it off my phone before I got anywhere near there.
I've taken it off and put it back on and take, like, depending when I have something else I really have to be focusing on, I'll take all the games off of everything. But I do enjoy them. It's kind of like poetry to me, in that there's so many, you're looking for patterns.
Yes.
Um and so I do enjoy that. So I have also really enjoyed talking with the two of you today.
Oh, it's been a pleasure talking with you.
Yes, same for me.
And where can folks pick up Skipping Stones at?
Well, it's on Amazon and a whole bunch of other places. You can get it via the Bumble Puppy Press, which is BP Press.
Can you
Okay.
see properly?
Yeah.
Yep.
I forget whether it's .com or .ca. Isn't that terrible? You can also, I will have, and I don't have yet, but I will have a link on my webpage, which is simply adriennestevenson.ca.
Okay.
There it is.
Ah,
And it's CA.
It is CA.
Bumble Puppy. That's a fun name. Is that a reference to something specific, or just
We're not
fun?
quite sure.
But it certainly is a different name.
This is his first foray into publishing poetry. So we're all experimenting here.
Yes, it's an adventure.
Excellent. Well, hopefully it is a good adventure, and I look forward to hearing more adventures from you all in the future.
Well, it's been very nice to be invited to chat with you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
What a fun interview that was. I hope you had as much fun listening as I had talking. I'm so impressed with Adrienne and Marie-Andrée, not just because of how wonderful their work is, which it is wonderful, but that's just part of it. The other thing is just being able to collaborate with somebody on an artistic endeavor. That wows me because I can't do that. I have tried twice. One time we never even got, like, we were talking about it over lunch, and then by the end of lunch we were like, no, we cannot collaborate. And then another one, we had written some, and then we just had this big sort of philosophical difference. I don't know if it's that I have a big ego or what, but I'm always impressed when people can collaborate on work together. So very excited to get to read Skipping Stones, which is out now. You know what else is out now? Moonwater from Spelljar Press, which you've heard me talk about a few times already. You know what else is out? Or rather up, Ezzy. Ezzy's up and her ear is flipped. Yeah. I'm going to keep that in just because I want you to see me flip my cat's ear because she's so cute. And she was so annoyed that I just did that. Anyway, Moonwater Press is, Moonwater Press. Moonwater Anthology is out now. She's eating the fake plants behind me, isn't she? Yes. Don't eat the fake plants, please. Thank you. Okay. So, Moonwater's out now from Spelljar Press. And if you pay attention to other and watched other interviews on my channel, Shelley Keyes, Danielle Neve, Kim Malinowski, they are all in here. So is Adrienne Stevenson, who was just in the interview you've just watched. Patricia Brody, whose interview will be coming up next week, is also in this anthology. So it's got a lot of great people. Oh, and me. Did I say me yet? I don't remember. But I'm in here too. So a lot of cool stuff from Spelljar Press in their Moonwater anthology. And I think I better go and save my plants now from Ezzy's terrible monster jaws. Thanks for stopping by.